Hey, and welcome to Dancing in the Daily, a home for change makers, caretakers, healers, and everyday community builders. Together, we are calling in more love, joy, and connection into our world. Today, we have my beloved Miss Annie Paraison. Annie is the founder, cultural architect, and lead consultant at Love Before All, where she focuses on helping businesses and community organizations promote collective success and well being through building brain based relationship models, all rooted in love. That's why she's my girl. Today, we will discuss how we can use love to transform our practices as leaders and as organizations. Annie, welcome and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love playing with you. You know that.
Yes, yes, that's right. And I'm excited to just explore, your journey of your work. Your work is phenomenal. Your energy, your spirit is phenomenal. And I know that people are going to be so inspired by you and by this conversation. So I wanted to open up and actually ask you about the name of your business, Love Before All. Because that's a powerful name, honey. You don't just name a consulting practice Love Before All. You're letting the people know. So I want to know about the moment, right, that you realized that love needed to be prioritized in your work and in organizations, right? I'm sure there was more than just one moment, but do you have a moment that you can think back to and say, okay, I can't do things business as usual anymore. We have to prioritize love.
I can't say that I have a moment, but I can say love has always been a constant in my life. So, like, even growing up, being from Haiti, raised in Haiti until I was about 13 years old, I love is just was always a constant. My family's very loving and very community oriented, very tight knit. They have always shown up with love in a lot of ways, in their own way. They've always kind of prioritized love in the family. And it doesn't hurt that there's a lot of us, like family wise. So, like, a Sunday dinners used to be like a whole community of folks. I'm talking about 40, 50 deep just at Sunday dinner. So I
Mhm.
think having that large number of people growing up present, laughing. I mean, there was a lot of laughter. Even now, when we get together, what I love about my family is there's always a lot of joy and laughter, and music is a part of like our gathering. So I think love has always been a constant in my life. And if I had to pinpoint a a moment, maybe a chapter, when I realized we needed to start talking, like calling it out specifically as to why Love Before All is the name of the consulting agency. It would be around my time supporting teachers, supporting
Mm.
early childhood teachers, I will say, because they tend to be the least paid. And personally, I feel like they have the most important job because by the time a baby's three, 85% of their brain is in place. Size, I should say, the size of their brain is in place by the time they're three. And I think the misconception is that they're not ready to learn until they're ready for school. But really, we're missing out on so much. So, because I was sitting helping teachers and because they're paid the least, they came in with so much and their ability to I mean, every day, put that so much aside and still show up for the babies and
Yes.
love on them and build those brains that are going to be the brains that are building and sustaining us when we get
Yes.
old
Yes.
is when I realized like this needs to be called out. We need to explicitly talk about what love looks like in a professional setting. Because I think a lot of times people hear love and they're like, oh, that doesn't belong at work. But there are a lot of ways that I have been blessed to work in spaces where love was present, even though it wasn't called out. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell people a lot, I have worked in a lot of organizations that have invested in this brain, and I am so grateful for that. That is the show of love. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I would say that my time as an instructional coach with the Read to Succeed program was probably when I left them is when I was like, yeah, this needs to happen.
Can you talk about like that gap, right? So you give this beautiful description of your childhood in Haiti, filled with love and community, right? And I'm wondering, like, what did that grow in you? Who did you become because of that love? And then thinking about an environment where you're working with early childhood educators, and I know you had some beautiful, loving experiences, but of course, there were environments as well where maybe there feels like there's a gap or a lack of love, right? Or that the love energy isn't being maximized, right? And so, how did you feel in that capacity? How could you sense, what was happening inside of you that you felt like, oh, there needs to be some more love in the room? What was the difference between those two experiences?
And I wouldn't, and like I said, I think there was a time where I realized it just needed to be explicitly called out. But to your point, I think the reason why, whether or not I was aware of it or not, I still showed up in a lot of ways lovingly is
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that I was loved, I will say. And I specifically want to say having a lot of sip, and there are things that I think people think just naturally come to people, but I am going to tell you, examine the environment, and it's the environment that is making it a lot, like that makes me think I'm naturally loving, but I'm not naturally loving. I was in an environment that cultivated love in who I am. I was in an environment that now the automatic thing for me is to think about, is everyone included? Does everyone feel like they have a voice? But I was in an environment that bred that cultivated that in me, which is why I think about it. So I think in general, which is why now I'm like, oh, it's important for leaders to understand that these things don't happen by accident. It's important for leaders to know we have to explicitly not just talk about them, but put things in place so that people naturally fall into them. An example I'll give is I'm getting into blue zones because I'm trying to live until 111.
Yes, yes,
And
Dan Buettner.
so one of the things that he says is like behavior change is really difficult. What you do is you change the environment. So it's like people don't
Mhm.
walk, right? What I'll do is instead of telling people to walk, I'm gonna build more sidewalks. And then even take it even a little deeper. Not only am I gonna build sidewalk, I might raise the price of gas.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
you see, but those two change. Do you see how they automatically is like, oh, gas is too expensive. I should probably walk or bike.
Yeah.
Oh, there are more sidewalks. It's safer for me to walk. So once you change the environment, people you don't give people they don't have to use brain capacity to like start to
Mhm.
shift their behaviors. So I
Mhm.
think that is what I hope, like how I hope to support leaders is to say, okay, we know behavior change takes a lot of work because it takes a lot of internal energy in thinking, in uh planning to change your behavior. And then it takes time. But if I can shift the environment where choice is not something that you have to keep thinking about, it makes it so much easier for us to shift into this space. That is loving.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I would love if you could kind of paint a picture for us of an organization where love is the guiding force or the guiding principle for the environment. Because I think, when we talk about love, oftentimes people feel like, well, how do I measure that, or how do I implement that? Is that tangible, right? Like what's the metric? And it can be hard for organizations and leaders professionally to think about, well, what does it mean to have love as an organizational value, right? And so I'm wondering if you can kind of just like paint a picture for us.
Mhm.
What does leadership look like in an organization that is using love as a guiding design principle, right? How are people interacting and communicating with each other? What do physical spaces, or what could they look like in an organization where love
Yeah.
is the principle?
I'm going to say an organization that prioritizes love, their leadership embodies holistic wellness for the individual, every single individual in the organization, as well as the organization itself. And then it's deeply compassionate. The leadership is deeply compassionate. And the leadership has a deep understanding and commitment to the needs and aspirations of every individual in that organization. They prioritize environments, whether physical, emotional, digital, that nurture relationships, that foster trust, that encourage team members to thrive personally and professionally. And I'm a big proponent of agency because as a leader, I can build the environment to be completely beneficial for you, but I can't make you take advantage of all the things that the environment is offering. So I think there is a proponent of part of having a deep understanding for the need and aspiration of every individual is also understanding that that piece. As a leader, I can build the environment, but some people won't take advantage of it. So there's an additional support for middle managers to take that into account. And also, some people need to be pushed. Others, you just say, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they can run with it. And then that's the spectrum, right? And then being able to understand, or sometimes it's a simple like, what is the best way to support you as the employee? So it's like, it's not even extra work where you have to pay attention and get to know folks. Sometimes communication is all you need to kind of start to build these environments. I encourage leaders who are deeply compassionate, who prioritize holistic wellness and compassion, and who have a deep understanding of their people to do that through communication. And that communication also prioritizes wellness. That communication is also compassionate. And and I say compassionate because there is also accountability in all of this. And the compassionate accountability takes into account the whole individual. It also takes into account, yes, I asked you to do this, but did I actually give you all of the things that you needed to be successful at doing this? And then you spoke of metrics. And when we think about specific metrics, you're not actually measuring love, even though the scientists are looking for ways to measure compassion, but you're not actually measuring compassion. You're not actually measuring holistic wellness. What you're measuring is employee engagement and satisfaction. What you're measuring is the training and development programs that you're offering. You're seeing in performance evaluations for everyone how people are progressing from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, or from the time they start in the organization to the time that they're leaving. So part of the exit interview needs to kind of incorporate that. And that's how having feedback mechanism besides your performance evaluation that allows you to track, like, well, what's your experience like? And I know there are companies that are already doing this. So the metrics are already there. But I think when we think about love, people seem to think that they look different. That it's like, oh no, I have to come in and measure love, or I have to come in and measure compassion, or I have to come in and measure empathy. But it's not the thing that you're measuring, is the effect that those things are having on the people that are working together and do. Like, how are your outcomes? Like your outcomes, the percentage, the success rate of meeting your outcome is what tells you that's alive. And I will also counter that sometimes, yeah, there are organizations that are successful that are slave drivers too.
Yes.
But the feedback mechanism will also communicate that to the leaders. It'll say, y'all work us, what's the average day that you work? 16 hours. And if you're seeing that, then it's also communicating, are you prioritizing wellness if you're asking your employees to put in 16-hour days in order to be successful?
Can you talk to us about kind of what can hinder love, right? Because I feel like, as you mentioned, love is this really fundamental thing, right? That like as human beings, we have a yearning for it. And I really do believe that most people want to be loving and want to receive love and work in loving environments. I believe the best in humanity. And also for every single human being, right? Like we struggle to do that. We struggle to embody love. We struggle to receive love. We struggle to certainly create organizations that feel loving. So, what are some of the things that you think hinder or limit organizations' ability to embody that love? Like, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that organizations are facing?
there are several factors, and I'm just going to stick on four because only four of them are coming to mind right now. The
Mm-hmm.
first one I want to point out is cultural norms. And I don't mean cultural norms. Yes, cultural norms in terms of uh, people culture, but cultural norm in terms of organizational culture. Cultures that prioritize productivity, competition, and efficiency over effectiveness, compassion, and wellness. And I oftentimes I'll say I'll support you in prioritizing people and profit because you can have both. You don't have to choose. And I think this scarcity mindset pushes us into thinking we can't have it all. And I'm here. And I tell people, yes, you can. You just have to take it takes a little bit of work for you to figure out how to have it all, but you can have it all. You just have to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to sit down and figure out how to make it happen. The second thing is power dynamics. And of course, we're talking about systemic power, um, the way that organizations oftentimes structure the hierarchy can stand in the way of love as well, because it causes imbalances, it causes a lack of inclusion. And the second you have a lack of inclusion, your practices are not love centered. They're just not love centered environment. And then organizations that overly put pressure on the hierarchy want to maintain authority rather than collaborate in an environment of collaboration and trust. So it's like, I may want to do this innovative thing, but I didn't get permission. So, and I don't really feel comfortable having this conversation, so I'm not going to have it. So I might have had a wonderful idea that could have catapulted the organization into amazing success, but it's never going to get talked about because of the power dynamics within that organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is vulnerability in general. I was reading Bell Hooks. Oh, I'm gonna butcher the title. It's a book about masculinity,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I
The
can't remember the
willingness to
title.
change or something. The will to change.
The will to change. Yes. So the will to change, and then she says something that really struck me, and this is where I feel like fear of vulnerability is like deeply rooted in us because we are a product. We all are a product of our environment. She says we want men to show up a certain way at the same time be loving. So, but they can't be loving if we don't handle them with love. And she was speaking specifically about Black mothers who raise Black boys, but because of the way they also show a lack of love when they're raising the Black boys, they also don't know how to show love. So I really appreciate the way that she talks about vulnerability is so difficult because they interpret it differently. But when you embrace love and you involve vulnerability and you are authentic and you are emotionally open, not everyone has the skill to do that effectively. So it's either you are too vulnerable and you're crying all the time because something sad is happening, or you're not vulnerable at all. They're like, it is being able to utilize vulnerability as a skill to build trust, to like prioritize love is a skill that we can learn. But because we don't foster vulnerability at all or like we oftentimes do not prioritize vulnerability. And one way that I think organizations try to foster vulnerability is by allowing people to fail. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
allow people to fail, it's like, oh, I can bring a little of me in here.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's cultivated here, I feel comfortable doing that a little bit more because I know if I fail, I'm not gonna get the boot. So I do think that's one way that organizations try to, but oftentimes they don't involve vulnerability, they don't involve authenticity, and they don't involve emotional openness because sometimes we don't see that as strength.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see it as something that actually benefits the organization. And from my experience, it benefits both the organization and the individual that is opening up and being vulnerable. Because And I'll give you an example. If you're my manager and I'm afraid to come to you and tell you, I know you gave me this task, but I have no idea how to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm, but I don't want to take, I don't want to be vulnerable with you and say I have no idea to do it. I might go to Google and try to figure it out. And I've wasted all of this time bringing you something that I was like, oh no, that's not what I asked for. Instead of directly coming to you, my manager, and saying, hey, I know you gave me this task, but I'm going to need a little bit more than just the instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And then oftentimes too, I think managers don't recognize there are different hats to put on with different employees. Sometimes you're a
Mm-hmm.
coach, sometimes you're a director, and you're a director with any new employee who have no idea, who are new to the field. And I say
Mm-hmm.
you're a director, not for micromanagement purposes, but as in I'm going to give you the sequence of tasks that need to happen because that's more of the teacher. The director is more, I've taught you, now
Mm-hmm.
I'm directing it, and then I'm coaching because at this point you have the skills. We've done it together. And now I'm just kind of pulling out the different versions of what this could look like inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And managers don't often recognize that they wear all these different hats.
Mm-hmm.
And then one last thing I think that stands in the way is a lot of organizations are short-term focused. They prioritize short-term gains over long-term investments in culture, in employee wellness, in
Mm-hmm.
doing love-centered practices as secondary to immediate business objectives.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. I want to also like ask, follow up about authenticity because I think something that has been personally challenging for me, but also inspiring. The challenge also inspired me actually to create Dancing the Daily was doing social change work, whether it's for a government agency, labor union, schools, nonprofits. I've worked in all of these different kind of like change making fields, and in every single one, I was working at organizations where we had these beautiful mission statements, right? And you had people who came to this work from a deep space of love of humanity, love of their community, love of people. And then we would get together and all the mess would come out, you know?
Mhm.
And in that space, you would have supervisors who are really well meaning who would use the language of love and care and community and right, they had all the right language, but the actual feeling in the organization was it didn't feel authentic. There was still fear, there was still competition, there was still isolation. Within specifically in the change making field, what are some ways that we can talk about or embody love, practice love from a space of authenticity, right? And kind of get deeper than some of the nice platitudes that happen sometimes in our field.
The very first thing I want to emphasize is you attack systems, not people.
Mm,
And the reason why I want to emphasize that is I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter who you are as a human being. I will honor your lived experience. I will show you love. I will like show up for you in love as a fellow human being, but I will attack systems. What ends up happening, I also make it clear, we have to make it clear that it's important that you do not identify with certain systems. Because when I attack systems, if you identify with that system, you will mistakenly think I am attacking you. And I
mm-hmm.
am not attacking you. I
Yeah,
will radically stand against systems because systems don't bleed, they don't breathe, they can't love. I can't ask a system to love because it
yeah.
cannot, it does not have the ability to do so.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will call you to the table. I will ask you to embody love with me. And I say ask because I can't force you to do anything, which is why
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the loving thing you can do is say as a team member, and I know we use this culture fit word a lot for other reasons, but if you choose not to embody love, one of my values is also freedom. I
Mm-hmm.
respect it, but I will also tell you that this is not the space for you because we embody love. And I do agree with you that performance is huge in the change making space. It is huge. And what I personally do to help with that is one-on-one like connections, because I can call you to the table one-on-one and you won't feel attacked because you don't feel the need to perform for the other ears and the other eyes that are in the room, which is why when I am calling you to the table, it's usually we're doing it on an individual basis. That is best practice. I don't like the word best practice because I've come to find that organizations are, they're beautiful, and there are not many replication, and that's the same with people. Organizations are like people to me, and you don't find a lot of them that are exactly the same. Yes, there are threads in my work that I use, but I'm finding the expression of them are always different because the organization is different. So I think what you're speaking to really goes back to accountability. It goes back to vulnerability too, because what people don't realize is when I'm calling you to the table, it is an equally uncomfortable situation for me, because I am programmed to go with the status quo, to be conformist, to not challenge what you're saying. So it is an equally uncomfortable conversation for me. But I am doing the brave thing because I am committed to embodying the things that I speak of. Does that mean I do it all the time? No. Because there are times where I'm like, today I just don't have the capacity, and I honor that. So I also go back
That's
to,
loving too, honey. Loving to yourself and
yes,
loving to them to say, let me go ahead and step back for a second.
yep. One of my quotes is, the relationship with yourself is the foundational relationship.
That's
So
right.
that's the one that comes first. It doesn't matter if you're a mother, if you're a sister, if you're a leader, whatever it is, the relationship to yourself is foundational, because you cannot escape how you treat yourself. How you treat yourself will be the way you treat people. And if you do not take the time to love on yourself, if you do not take the time to change the self-talk, if you do not take the time to heal the parts of you, and the way you heal them is by showing them love. When they show up, no matter how ugly they are, you say, you're asking for love, and I'm willing to give it to you. And that's how you heal those parts of you. And one thing, I just finished reading a Return to Love by Miriam
Williamson.
Williamson.
Yes. Love that book.
Marianne Williamson. And
Yes.
one thing that she said that deeply got in, that relates to this, she said, you are not in pain because of the love you didn't get in the past. You're in pain because of the love you're not giving in the present. And I said,
Yes.
whoo,
Yes.
that is a
Yes.
message right here. And oftentimes when it comes to love in all settings, we feel like somehow you have to deserve it. And I'm here to say, are you a human being? Then you deserve, like, this you don't have to work for love. And I am not expecting you to work for love. I want to create environments where love is the constant,
Yes.
where people are going to show up and know it's going to be a loving space. And there are going to be some reprogramming that's going to happen, because it's been like some people go their entire life and don't find these environments. And I love to know, like, I'm love privileged. I tell people that all the time. I am love privileged. It's easy for me to ditch it out because I have it in abundance.
Amen.
I recognize that deep in my soul. It is limitless. All I got to do is pull it out. Like, I never run out of.
Yes.
There are days where I make the choice to not give love. And in those days, I stay to myself. I stay in my house, I close the door, and I don't interact with people, because I know I want to embody love in public. That's what I want to do. And on the days where I don't have the capacity, I just isolate. But it's a choice. And I recognize that I have that. That's why I said I'm love privileged. There's an abundance of it inside of me. And I love sharing it with you. I love sharing it with the people in my life, and I love sharing it with complete strangers. That's why my smile comes easy, my service comes easy,
Yes.
and it is definitely in the same space too. Love is also how I hold myself accountable, which is why I am able to hold people in this space who are doing the change. I'm able to hold them accountable to, if they're willing. I'm always willing to have at least one conversation with you, and then I kind of sit back and see what you do with the information. And if it goes in one ear and out the other, then I know what I'm dealing with. But if I can see there's interest in continuing to have authentic conversation that will lead to authentic shifts, then I'm willing.
Oh my goodness. Beautiful, beautiful. This is why I love you so much. When I tell you I am love privileged to be able to call you my sister in this life journey. I am just so in awe of your spirit. You are so beautiful. I want to
Thank
ask
you.
about, some skills that leaders can be cultivating, right? So that they can build these loving and affirming environments, right? So are there any specific skills that you support leaders with developing? And are there any specific practices or resources that can help them develop those skills?
I am going to say for sure, I'm going to start with conflict resolution because I
Mm-hmm.
think we're programmed to think conflict is a problem, whereas conflict is an important part of deepening the intimacy in relationships. And when I say intimacy, I just mean your ability to, when you're in a relationship with somebody, intimacy for me is your ability to understand each other so well that words sometimes aren't needed. That's what I mean by intimacy. Like, in conflict allows for us to deepen the intimacy between us. And the more we understand each other, what I like to say is we're in a relationship and I'm going to teach you how to speak Annie and you're going to teach me how to speak Erica. One in much like picking up another language, it takes time. You're going to take time and you have to actively practice. So conflict, there has to be set rules on how we're going to handle it with love. Like, we have to be able to say, yeah, you messed up. And instead of saying you suck, it's like, hey, when this is how it made me feel. These are the helpful behaviors for next time. And that way I'm not focusing on, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person because I've hurt someone I work with, I've hurt someone I'm in relationship with. I'm focused on, oh, thank you, because now you've given me helpful behaviors to support me if, like, not if, when this happens again, because let's be real, they're going to happen again. So
Mm-hmm.
conflict resolution is definitely a skill I would say is necessary. Emotional intelligence is another one because it's important to be able to regulate yourself. An example I'll give is I actually had a date with a friend last night who said that her son plays basketball, and sometimes when he misses a very important shot, disappointment takes over his body and he cries and he can't even finish the game. So what I will say is, for leaders, if you cannot, if you allow emotions to hijack your physical body, you end up moving on emotions that don't have the entire all the information. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes your emotions are really important because they are communicating things about you that will build your self-awareness. But I don't think oftentimes, if you express, it's the expression of your emotions that's the problem. And I think practicing conflict resolutions, having processes for how you're going to handle conflict is important because then people can practice, which also help people feel safer in making mistakes and engaging with conflict because we have a we have agreements on how we're going to do that. And we know one of the main agreements is that it's going to happen within the realms of love. So with emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, I'm going to say being authentic is important because if you're not authentic,
Yeah.
you will, if I'm not being authentic, Erica, you can't learn to speak Annie.
Mm.
Like,
There you go.
and,
There you
and
go.
if you cannot learn to speak Annie if I'm not being authentic. And if you can't
Yes.
learn to speak Annie, we never have a deeply intimate relationship where we can actually just move seamlessly through the things that through the very important work that we're doing.
That's
So
right.
it's very important to be authentic because when you're authentic, you're consistent. When you're authentic, and consistency is important because it inspires trust, it inspires loyalty. People know you're genuine, you're transparent, you're true to yourself, and you stick to your values. And that is why it's important to be authentic because when people see that from you, and this is biology, their brain naturally know they can trust you because of the consistency. So that's why it's important. I would add authentic to that list. And then I would say deep listening. And I say deep listening because active listening is something that we say all the time. And deep listening is something I learned in a fellowship I completed last year. They've become my community of love, my beloved community.
Yay.
And I got deep listening from that, from the Transformative Educational Leadership community. And what it is listening with your entire body, not just with your ear. So that means you're paying attention to movements, to intonation and the voice, and you're not listening to fix, and you're not listening to provide a solution. You're just in it with the person, which some people will probably say there's a little bit of empathy that comes into that too, because there's a genuine interest in understanding not just what you're saying, but understanding how your entire person is related to what it is that you're sharing with me. And then the last thing I would say is compassion. Like compassion, I think I always use compassion because I think compassion always brings into mind that you cannot take for granted the human experience. And I think for a long time, the story I told myself was I was superhuman, but in that I berated myself a lot because I wasn't superhuman. I was human. So I denied myself the human experience a lot of times. And I'm recognizing how important it is for us because of this work we're doing with in social change. It's important that we don't lose the human experience.
Yes.
Because if we lose the human experience, we lose the soul of what we're doing.
Yes.
Because we're doing this for human beings. And
Yes.
if we lose that on that, we lose soul, and we can't do this without soul.
Come on
So, yeah.
now.
So compassion, deep listening, authenticity, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence, I would say, are probably the 5 that I would focus on. And of course, there's a list of other executive skills that will prove useful, but cultivating those 5 as a leader is gonna support you, because then you can just surround yourself with people who are great at the other suite of executive.
Oh my goodness. Annie, I am just juiced up. I'm gassed up. I'm inspired. My last question for you is just about what keeps you excited for the future, right? I know that we live in a time where there's so many beautiful things happening. We also have genocide happening in the world, right? Multiple wars, lots of societal conflict, elections happening, poverty, all kinds of things that are happening in the world. And people are experiencing really real heartbreak, right? Because there's so much real challenging, heartbreaking things that are happening in the world. And so in this context, what keeps you excited, inspired, hopeful for love?
People like you, for sure. And I say people like you because when you do this work, sometimes it can be isolating and it can be lonely, especially when you are looking to embody love, to prioritize love. This can feel like a very lonely place because the systems that I was saying that I attack all the times, they are strong, baby. They've been here for centuries and they are up in there. And sometimes I like to use the metaphor. I feel like I'm washing my hands and then I'm wiping it on the floor. And then I'm washing my hands and I'm wiping it on the floor. And I'm not doing it intentionally, but because I work in the systems that I work in, the system comes right up and pushes me down and my hands are on the floor again and I'm having to go wash them again. So I will say people like you, and there's a whole community of you all that help me do this, are one of the ways that I have hope, because I don't tell myself the story that I'm alone anymore. And I continue to remind myself that there are people out there that are doing the work. And it's not my job alone to do the work.
Yes.
I will also say another major thing that keeps me from waking up with my heart broken every single day is the concept of interbeing by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is I recognize that when I wake up every day and I love on myself, the world is just a bit more loving, the entire world, because I think we have evidence all around us of the interdependence that exists between us. And the example I use is COVID started in China and somehow it shut down the entire world. And if
Mhm.
you need I can't think of a better example of the interdependence between human beings who decide to like separate themselves with borders and whatever they choose to separate themselves with. That is a perfect example of our interdependence, regardless of what part of the world that we live in. And because of that, interbeing has been a constant in my life. And it is the reason why I don't wake up with my heart broken. I trust that if when I take care of myself and I use the tools that I take care of myself and I give them to you, Erica, and I give them to the leaders that I end up coming into contact with, the world is increasingly becoming more loving. And that gives me hope that even again, and I tell people that I don't need everybody to be that way. And I feel like the research says only about you're only going to really reach about 1/3 of the people you come into contact with. And that's all I need because they're also going to touch 1/3 of people that they
Yeah,
come into contact with,
yeah,
who would then will come into contact with another third.
yeah.
And eventually the global majority are the loving people.
Mhm.
They're the global majority who are tribal, but they're tribal for humans in
Mhm.
general, not
Mhm.
for Americans, not for Chinese, not for Canadians. They're tribal for human beings in general. And
Mhm.
that it pours into me and I
Mhm.
wake up smiling, I wake up singing. Music is a constant in my life.
Oh.
And because I recognize that the best thing I can do is take good care of myself, take amazing care of myself, take very loving care of myself so that I can be the example. Because the best way to make change for real is to really model that change. And I wake up every day, I charge myself with modeling the change and and I have faith that it's enough.
Mm, oh my goodness. Yes, yes. Wake up every day, setting the intention to model the change and having the faith that that is enough. Yes, girl. Let me wake up tomorrow. Time for bed so I can wake up and get on my Annie. Okay. Before we go, please let everyone know how they can connect with you. You are doing some amazing work, coaching leaders, supporting businesses, supporting organizations. How can they connect with your work and support you?
Thank you. I am on LinkedIn under Love Before All or Annie Paraison, either one. If you find one, you'll find the other. I am also on Facebook and Instagram under Conscious LBA for Instagram and then Love Before All on Facebook. I can also, I email is the best way to contact me. Annie at lovebeforeall.com is probably the best way you can contact me. And then our website, of course, is another way you can kind of go ahead and schedule time to connect with me. And that's lovebeforeall.com.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. I love playing with you. Time with you is always a great time. Like, I cannot say enough how much of a cheerleader you are for me and how much you support. Like, when you say love, you are, when I met you, are one of the main reasons that I answer the call every morning when I get up. I answer the call.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Well, you keep my cup full and it's easy to pour back into you, sister. Thank
Yeah, I see. Let's keep the cycle going.
Yes, yes, overflowing. We are overflowing. Thank you so much. And thank everyone for watching this episode. We're excited to keep pouring into you. We live in a world, we need you. We need your love. You are enough. You are powerful. And so we're hoping to create content and opportunities and experiences to pour into you so that you can also be overflowing in your community.